Welcome to a Script to Screen workshop podcast. Script to Screen is a charitable organisation developing the craft and culture of storytelling for the screen in Aotearoa, New Zealand. In May 2021, Script to Screen partnered with the Aotearoa Screen Publicists Collective to present the A-Z of Screen Publicity wānanga. The aim of the workshop was to show the many ways screen publicists can work alongside creatives to ensure their stories are discovered and watched by their target audiences. The sessions were recorded, and this is one of 10 that you can listen to. Each session has its own whakatauki befitting the theme of the discussion.
Whāngaia ka tupu, ka pua wai. That which is nurtured blossoms and grows.
Welcome to Personal Branding. In this session, Chris Henry, Director of 818 and People of Influence and a founding member of the Aotearoa Screen Publicists Collective, speaks to powerhouse duo Miranda Harcourt, an internationally recognised acting coach, actor and director, and New Zealand playwright, scriptwriter and director Stuart Mckenzie, in a korero about personal branding and making authentic connections with your own audience.
So just to give you a bit of a background on myself, so outside of the publicity space, I run a talent agency called People of Influence, and it's a social media talent agency that works with influential talent in the social space. So we're trying to work outside of the influencer model, which I believe sort of is sort of dominated by those that look pretty and can take a nice photo, and actually finding people that have genuine influence and repping them for ambassador and brand campaigns. They come from a whole lot of different walks of life. They come from they're either actors or they're radio presenters or they're sports people, and this kind of helps me sort of segue into the idea of what we're talking about here today, which is social media. But it's social media on the creative side and why it's important for you guys to be doing it personally. So just as a quick kind of show of hands scenario, as from a professional perspective, whether that's through any sort of Instagram or Twitter or LinkedIn and all of that sort of stuff, who uses social media for that purpose? Oh, nice. Oh, this could be all very helpful. Now, I'm going to run through a few things at the beginning, but I should just do a quick introduction to two of my friends who have come along to join today, coming live from Porniki. We have got the first family of television and film in this country. We've got Miranda Harcourt and Stuart Mckenzie. Say hi, guys. We're going to be coming to these guys soon because they do an incredible job at using their own social media channels to engage with other creatives and promote their work. So if you guys don't mind, I'm just going to take a quick moment to kind of talk about some of the reasons about why we might do it, and then I'm going to bring you guys in to talk about how you do it. So firstly, I think when it comes to social media, it's really important to kind of have a bit of a plan about how you'll take it personally. I know that myself, from a professional perspective, the way that I use social media is in a large part quite personal. I use it to engage with friends and family and all of that sort of stuff. But I do make sure that my business endeavours do appear across my social accounts. And it is amazing about how much that impacts us from a revenue perspective. I'm constantly being told by clients or media, people that we meet, like, oh God, you're so busy, you're all doing such great stuff at the moment. And the only reason they know that is because they see that across my social accounts. So as much as the Instagram is a nice sort of highlights reel of your life, it's also really good to be able to show the cool stuff that you're doing. You know, the fact that you're here today, or that you've just wrapped production on a film, or you're premiering your project, or you're in development or casting. It's great to be able to get that sort of stuff out. So there's a couple of reasons about why you would want to do it in that regard. And I think the first one is around that branding space. The second reason I think that you would want to use social media is around connecting and engaging with your audience. Now, this is kind of a bit of a case-by-case basis depending on how you sit against your particular audience, whether the project you're making is directly, whether you're a peer of your audience or whether your audience is quite different to yourself. It is a great way for you to become part of the narrative of the project that you're working on. The other part is making professional connections. So a lot of social media accounts, especially Twitter and Instagram, have sort of opened the door to getting in touch with a lot of well-known people and creatives around the world. They are just the same as you. They have the app on their phone. You might appear in their sort of other messages list, but you'd be quite surprised about how many people look through that and might be able to pop in a response. And so the way of being able to connect with them and sort of build these virtual communities can be really helpful when it comes to getting projects off the ground or getting extra leverage on the projects. And I think as we kind of go through this session and after we've had a bit of a chat to Miranda and Stuart, we might sort of go around the room because I know there's a few people that have got a couple of examples about that to show that kind of in play. And then the fourth way that I really think is really important is around being able to sort of understand and essentially maybe even snoop on your audience's responses to projects. I think I said this in the After Dark session last night. Twitter and some social media is sometimes known as the talkback radio of the left. So it's very liberal and it's very like, we should be right at all times. And if you're not doing this quite right, I'll jump on you. But at the same time, it's a really good way of just kind of getting a really good test of what people are interested in, how they're going with your project. It's also really good to be able to snoop on other people's projects, you know, hopping on the hashtag of an international property that you think that your project might be close to or inspired by, and seeing what their reactions about. Like, what is their fandom or their audience like really engaging with? What is the bit that they kind of that's really getting them going, and being able to see how that might impact some of your either editorial decisions or directions that you're going in. So those are kind of the key reasons about why I think that you should do it. The other thing that I think that you need to really keep in mind with this is that social media is often one of those things that falls really far down the list of, and especially your personal social media or social media from a business perspective, can fall really low down your to-do list of things that you need to do on a daily basis. But my recommendation really strongly is that if you because it's obviously social media is all very much in real time, if you're in a juncture of your project that is interesting and engaging, you should be really making time like a job to be able to get in there and use that social media moment, making sure that you have got, you know, if your trailer is dropping for your project, you should have that out on your channels at the same time as it drops internationally, so that you've got the opportunity of aligning yourself more strongly with the brand. So make it a job, diary it, make a plan, and we'll talk a bit further about plans and stuff a bit further down the piece. But I would like to bring Miranda and Stuart into the mix now, because these guys do such a fantastic job. And should we just give them a round of applause and welcome them to the screen? Kia ora to you both. It's great. It's really great to have you guys here. Now, social media is something that you guys do fantastically, and I really admire how organic and natural that the stuff that you do is. But I suppose, firstly, would you guys be able to give us a little bit of a take for the audience around how you find social media beneficial from a professional perspective?
Sure. Yeah, you start.
Okay, from a professional perspective, by the way, can I ask, is that Michelle Ang that I can see out there in the audience?
You did such a great job in transmission for us. Thank you.
And so because that's Michelle, I'm going to start by being very specific about a project we've just finished, Transmission, which is a verbatim play written by Stuart, co-directed by us, starring Sophie Hamilton, Tom Knowles, Tim Spite, and Michelle Ang, and Lalena Fioanati. Yeah. Well done, Michelle. Michelle starred in the play on Zoom, so she was never there in the room with us, but she was in the performance every night, and her performance is absolutely brilliant. So we mounted that show as a little kind of a laboratory season at Bats Theatre, which is a tiny theatre. We knew that we would very quickly sell out, and we knew that we could say on our socials, sold out season 10 days before the show opened. And so that was really useful for us to be able to say. And we made sure that we documented our rehearsals at the Vocal Morn rehearsal room at an old bowling club that's been turned into a restaurant and a rehearsal room. It's really cool. And we knew that people around New Zealand and internationally would love to see the venue that we were rehearsing in. They would love to see other aspects of how we brought Michelle into the play, how we lured Tim Spite, one of the actors, away from his 8-year career as a builder, back onto the stage. There were little stories that we knew in the rehearsal process people would be really interested in, above and beyond the content of the play, which is an interview with Jacinda Ardern, Grant Robertson, and Michael Baker, the epidemiologist. And then once we got into the theatre, of course, we documented the transition into the theatre space, and then finally on opening night we were able to present an actual photograph of the cast on the stage doing their thing so beautifully. And along the way we drew in a huge amount of interest and intrigue as people were like, what is this project? We're finding it so interesting, meeting the personalities and following the human journey of rehearsal towards the opening night and then subsequently the tour. So that was based on you, Michelle, and your presence there today. That was the most recent way that I have been able to use my Facebook page for one aspect, which is followed by a number of people who are different from my Instagram followers, obviously. So if I put something up on both those pages, people respond in different ways. So I put that up on my Facebook page, and then I would slightly change it up and shift the focus a little bit for the way I presented that material on my Instagram. So that would be my most recent experience of using social media to a huge advantage for a project by showing a human face. And interestingly, just before I pass to Stuart, we decided that we would only advertise the show on social media. We had a poster, but beyond the poster, the only advertising we did was on social media. In fact, we had a guy from One News really wanted to do a feature story, and we said, no, we don't. We want to do that. We only want to use social media to advertise the show.
That's
to keep
fantastic.
keep it pure. Over to you, Stuart.
Well, actually, I mean, when we're touring the show, I think we would definitely use the guy from One News. But actually, the season had already booked out. Miranda said 10 days in advance. Actually, it was 2.5 weeks in advance. But there you go. And so at that point, we didn't need national media to cover the show. It wouldn't have increased the ticket sales in any way. We were really lucky that we had a great following on our different social media accounts. I only do Instagram because that's just something that really works for me. I love the conjunction of image and text. So I put my focus there, and I use it in quite a disciplined way. I will only post one post a day. I find that when you're posting too much, when people are posting too much, I kind of get a little bit overwhelmed by their account. And so I just like to use it. I post regularly at 6:30, 7:30 in the morning, and then I treat it as a little writing exercise. I give myself half an hour in the morning just to write something, a reflection on the day prior. It could be a work thing. It could be a family thing. It could be something that I'm reading, something that I've seen. So I try and keep it diverse because for me, I don't want it to be all about what I'm doing. I want it to celebrate what other people are doing, and also take the opportunity to highlight some of the things obviously that we're doing and that was great around transmission. But as I say, I try not to keep it too kind of religiously focused on one thing because I would lose interest doing it in that way. So it's not purely a marketing tool for me. It's a kind of a creative exercise in a funny way. And Chris, you'll know this because I started using Instagram when we released the changeover, and at that stage I had only maybe 80 followers, and now I have considerably more than that, but not a huge number by any stretch of the imagination.
Over 3,000.
But I just wanted to have that discipline of getting something out about the changeover. But then I found that it was really great for me creatively, almost as a photographic / writing exercise to do that every day, especially when you're in between significant creative projects. It's a great way of still having a creative voice. And
can I say about Stuart's Instagram, which I love, and in fact recently Jacinda Ardern, New Zealand's Prime Minister, I think you'll be familiar with her. She said to Stuart, because our play, the one that Michelle is in, Transmission, is primarily about Jacinda. And Jacinda said, do you know what, Stuart? Do you know something I do every day? And he said, no, I don't, Jacinda, tell me. And she said, I always check your Instagram. It's just like a little bit of light in my life.
Oh, put that on the poster.
And when Stuart first started posting on Instagram, which is a photographic forum primarily, it's about images, but Stuart went, I'm going to buck the trend, and I'm going to write. So he would write like sometimes 1,000 words. So he writes. I
never wrote 1,000 words.
Okay. Anyway. But anyway,
I would do a little mini essay, just something that held for me. But anyway, I don't want to keep rain on your parade.
But some people would say to him, be like, Stuart, why are you writing all those words on Instagram? That's not what Instagram's about. She'll be like, I'm not going to stop doing it. So you can just unfollow me if it's bugging you. And so now I'm reading in other people's Instagrams around the world. I'm like, I think this person has been reading Stuart's Instagram because other people are picking up on that thing of achieving universality through specificity. And just talking about a tiny thing in their day, going deeply into it, using words on Instagram coupled with a photograph or a series of photographs. In fact, the Instagram site that I think is most similar to Stuart's to me would be Humans of New York, where you kind of dive into a story alongside an image. So it's a really interesting creative project that he's doing, and it is incredibly diverse and interesting.
And it's a great, for me, it's a great kind of diary as well. I can go back and see where we've been at any particular time. So that's useful in all sorts of unexpected ways, actually. I had to give an account for our daughter Thomason's lawyers about where she was at particular times, finishing a job and starting another job. And I could just go back through my Instagram and say, such and such a date she started and such a date she finished. It was really, really useful.
that is fantastic. Now, Miranda, one of the things I notice about your social accounts is that you're very good at using it to help get the word out about great news, and that might be for yourself personally or around your family. How do you find that as a tool? Is that something that's been really helpful to you?
Oh yeah, I mean, I something that I hold fast to in my my life as a human is no filter approach. Nothing is hidden, and so we've celebrated that approach in a lot of the theatre and film work that we've done, where we just go, there are no secrets. So I kind of like the very transparent, naked aspect to whatever's happening in our lives as a family, or whatever's happening in my life personally. I'll put it there on Facebook or Instagram, not in a messy way, but in a sort of a thought out way. I like it to be beautiful. I don't want it to be just kind of shitty and random. Yeah, I'm very keen to use Facebook and Instagram as a tool to celebrate things that I'm passionate about. And sometimes they're not things that are totally about me personally. At the moment, tomorrow's Mother's Day. I represent Women's Refuge. I'm the face of Women's Refuge. And so last year during lockdown, Davida, our daughter who's 14, and I did a little lockdown video shot by Stuart. And sent that through to Women's Refuge, and they put it up on their socials for Women's Refuge for Mother's Day last year. And this year they've said it was so cool because it's so locked down, it's so home shot. Would you mind posting again, Miranda? So, that's the last Instagram post that I did was my Women's Refuge post both on Facebook and Instagram. So that's something that I want to lift up and celebrate, which is diverse. If somebody else has got a great opening that I'm really excited about, or somebody else has got an opportunity. Anna-Sophia-Robb, one of the girls that I coach in my job as an acting coach, she's scored a role and is shooting on a film by Jeremy Saunier called Rebel Ridge. That's exciting. It's kind of connected with me because I'm her coach, so I'll put that up on my socials to reach out and celebrate that opportunity for her.
But you'll often celebrate people who aren't connected with you, particularly just something that you really enjoy or something that has moved you in some way. And I really think that's very generous and a cool thing to do, that you can use your social media accounts to celebrate other people's endeavours, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes, like last year before the election, I got really riled up about Judith Collins and what a bitch she was being. And so I designed a cheap little thing for myself where I'd find a piece of news and I would retype it, and then I would put it on Instagram, and I'd put a pink kind of a tint on it, and I use my Instagram and my Facebook as a social media tool for to hold up the actual truth and what was going on in our country and the way that the government was fighting against COVID. And I got a lot of pushback about that. People would message me and say, what are you doing? I was like, I feel really strongly about this. So sometimes on that occasion, for that few months or few weeks, probably about 6 weeks, that my socials became a political tool. And then I moved away from that and I changed the flavour entirely and moved into something else. So it kind of shifts and changes for me according to the authenticity of my personal passion.
That is awesome, and I've definitely seen a lot of stuff that you guys have done where you've congratulated people in the wider industry as well as people that are connected to you, and I think that is fantastic to be able to spread the good word and sort of also be able to show to other people that are following you and creatives about how connected you are and how supportive you are of the wider arts.
I think otherwise social media can run the risk of being quite narcissistic.
Correct.
And so we try and just kind of reverse the mirror as much as we can.
Yeah. When we were releasing the changeover, Chris, you'll remember back then, I reached out to a famous person, like a young famous person, to say, could you put something up on your Instagram about the release of the changeover? And the answer came back no. I was like, that's weird. Why is that? So I checked out this person's Instagram, which I should have done beforehand, obviously. And of course, every single picture on this person's Instagram was of the person. So I was like, right, so the promotional material about some random film made by his friend is never going to play on that person's Instagram. But that was part of my decision to be very diverse and celebratory of things that inspire me on my own socials, because I think that diversity really draws people in.
And look, people will use their social media in a way that suits them. So there's no kind of judgment around that. And, I think you can be asked to kind of promote other people's work when sometimes it's just not appropriate for you or your account. So, you do have to have some kind of discrimination around that without feeling too guilty about it either.
Yeah, well, that is a difficult question too, because I'll get a lot of people sending me stuff saying, would you put this on your socials? I'm like, I'm not feeling it. That would not be authentic.
And authenticity is a big word, and I think one of the things that you've just said that I'd like to kind of push back to the room to think about is that social media doesn't necessarily need to be a photo of your face looking pretty on a daily basis. It can be images of your work. It can be things that are going on in your wider industry or things that you are passionate about. Someone once described to me as Instagram can be a really nice scrapbook of life, like if you think about it from that sort of perspective. So when we're thinking about it through the lens of how you would use it from a professional perspective as creators, it can be inspiration alongside the work that you're doing and the work that others are doing to kind of help build that sort of mood board of who you are as a creative and a person.
Yeah, I like that idea of it, using it as a scrapboard. That's beautiful.
Yeah. This is Stuart's Insta. This is the last few posts that he's done. And of those images, only one of them is of Stuart. And that's because yesterday we had lunch with Dale Dickey, who was in Leave No Trace with our daughter. She's an actress who we really admire. One of them is of our daughter at the police station because she got beaten up in Courtney Place. That was a post of Stuart's that ended up being quite a political post, because a lot of people got upset about the fact that a little kid got beaten up in the central city of Wellington and nobody did nothing about it. So it can be quite like what he does with his social media can be quite personally revealing, and I think that is something that people feel a little bit of doubt around. To what degree can I reveal what psychologists call the beautiful mess, which is the beauty of your own vulnerability, revealing your own vulnerability on social media? And sometimes people can take that too far, and sometimes they just don't go far enough with revealing our common humanity.
You're obviously the mother and father of a couple of quite up-and-coming creative people, but both across from an acting perspective and also your son in terms of from a political perspective and a journalism perspective. What sort of advice have you given them as they've gone through as they've got older around how to treat social media?
No, they've given us advice, and we did. We just followed their advice.
Yeah. Well, at the moment, our daughter Thomasin Mckenzie, she's in the UK doing a TV series called Life After Life. And I think what she's doing increasingly when she starts a project, especially a project which is in a time period where they had no social media, and this TV series is set in the 1920s, she will eschew social media altogether. She's never a big Facebooker, but she'll completely go off Instagram. I know our young friend Stefania Owen, another young New Zealand actress, she does the same thing. So that Instagram, her presence, the scrolling instinct, those are things that Thomasin and Stefania want to get rid of in their lives while they're immersively engaged in the creative process. And then once they've wrapped on what they're doing, then they will come back onto social media and use it as a tool to promote the things that they're interested in for Thomasin, so they can, for example, the New Zealand charity, or to promote their projects. But it can be a fraught space for young creators.
Especially, I think, when you're in the middle of a big project like Thomasin is, then it becomes a distraction from the work at hand. So, I really celebrate the fact that she's got enough nous to pick it up, use it when it suits her, and to put it aside when it's distracting or destabilizing or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and that's the advice that Thomas and Peter, our children, give to us. Enough with the social media, Mum and Dad.
Well, they don't say that because they can see that for us, we're using it in quite a disciplined way. And as I say, for me, it's like a writing exercise or a visual exercise that I pursue once a day.
Absolutely, and I think that kind of going back to the idea of treating social media in a professional capacity as a job and making time for it is really important. One of the elements that we've talked a little bit about that I think is really amazing about social media is sort of breaking down those barriers, being able to connect with people internationally. Have you found through social media that it has opened the door to you being able to speak to international talent?
Absolutely. I'm an acting coach, that's my job, and through social media, particularly over lockdown where everyone had to fall upon Zoom as opposed to work in 3 dimensions, my client base has absolutely grown and developed because people have started following me on social media. During lockdown last year, when we returned on March the 20th, the day the borders closed in New Zealand, we came back to New Zealand and spent 2 weeks in self-isolation at the very beginning of this whole thing. Stuart and I decided that we would do a 2-minute video per day through our 2-week lockdown, and we made 14 little 2-minute videos about the ideas that I bring around acting coaching, and they were very successful.
They were
surprisingly successful around the world, and they've continued to build because so many actors and creatives are in lockdown.
And we just shot them on our phone. We didn't have high production values around it because we just didn't have access to that kind of facility. So we shot it in Miranda's office on phone with the sound from the phone, and actually people really responded to that kind of aesthetic as well, I think.
Yeah. And from that, Chris, I've been able to develop a Substack account, and that Substack account, which is not that it's social media because it's a subscription platform, but that Substack account, which has now become very popular around the world, that would never have happened if it wasn't for those videos and if it wasn't for the global demand for content and inspiration at a tough time.
And also just for the discipline of putting that together, because when you have a Substack account and people are subscribing, you give them a piece of writing or an essay, once every however long. So for Miranda, it's every 2 weeks she'll post another piece of writing about acting coaching, about acting, and that becomes a discipline, and you really fulfill the disciplined nature of that.
Yeah.
And I think also, that's another great example of how social media is also used to push towards additional revenue sources, and finding other ways of putting revenue towards the different work that you're doing. I suppose my kind of last question for you guys before we kind of throw to the floor, because I'm sure that there'll be some questions, is I think there's lots of great creatives around the world that are using social media for a good purpose, and I haven't prepped you on this, so this is going to be straight at the top of your head. But who do you both think is doing a really great job at using their social media accounts to spread their creativity and I suppose be able to kind of push forward future projects?
I'll kick off while you have a think. I don't know whether this is quite the answer to your question, but I think that I follow 2 accounts, History of Cinema, which I love because it just gives me a tiny little jewel several times a day of cool things to think about and look at and go, oh, I must watch that. So History of Cinema is something that is a social media account that I follow enthusiastically, and also La Femme Merveilleuse, and I'll have to find out what the... if you look up La Femme Merveilleuse, which is French for the marvelous woman, that person, whoever that person is, whatever his or her name is, they are very politically engaged from a creative perspective, celebrating the world of photography, but also lifting up Jewish history. And I came upon La Femme Merveilleuse when Thomas was shooting Jojo Rabbit, because I thought it was a really great way for the kids in Jojo Rabbit to experience aspects on Jewish history, particularly the Holocaust, in a way that was open and accessible to 11, 12, 13, 14-year-olds, which were the age group of the kids who were in that film. So they're social media accounts that I follow every day. But also I think that Nicole Kidman, someone who I work with, Nicole has got a great relationship with her social media. Sometimes it's to promote The Undoing or Nine Perfect Strangers or whatever. Sometimes it is to wish happy birthday to her sister. So Nicole has got a professional relationship with her audience, but then also her personal life will come in, and then she'll go back to the professional, and you get this kind of breathing energy between those two elements of her life.
It's a great example. Stuart.
And for me, I follow a number of cinematographers, directors, writers, photographers. One of the accounts that I really love is a photographer called Peter Black, who's a New Zealand photographer. He was I think he was the first photographer to have been purchased by the then National Art Gallery, now Te Papa. But he runs a beautiful account where every day he posts another one of his wonderful images. He does a lot of great street photography. I'm very interested in contemporary art, New Zealand and internationally, so I follow a number of art museums, but there's a wonderful artist called John Ward Knox, who I think runs one of the best Instagram accounts around. So I follow him very closely.
He's a New Zealand artist.
He's a New Zealand artist. He's based down close to Dunedin. Humans of New York is an account that I've been following for the longest time, and I'm sure you guys do as well. Miranda and I have done a lot of verbatim work and a lot of kind of theatrical biography work, and Flowers from My Mother's Garden, Biography of My Skin. So that verbatim quality of Humans of New York is something that really moves and inspires me. So, all over the place there are, I use Instagram as an inspiration, so I can check in what other key creative people are doing who inspire me in some ways, and it's great for photography. It's great to see the work that contemporary photographers are doing.
Amazing. So there's a couple of examples in the room of a few things that are happening at the moment that kind of play back to our thing. So I'm going to ask a couple of people to speak, and Miranda, Stuart, I'd love you to be able to jump in and thoughts on this. Courtney was kind of going first. One of the things that we talked a little bit about at the beginning was how you can connect with people from all over the world through the use of social media. And Courtney, I wonder whether you might be able to share something from your experience around how social media and sort of sliding into the DMs, so to speak, can be beneficial.
Yeah, professionally sliding into the DMs. Kia ora, how are you guys? Here, hi.
This is Courtney.
I'm actually working with Dale at the moment, so I noticed that, Stuart, on your Instagram.
Oh, fantastic.
How great is she? Yeah. Anyway,
she is such a sweetheart. She's beautiful.
I know. I'm so glad, because I loved her as an actress, and now I love her as a person. But so I got to see this amazing film called Honey Boy at Sundance in 2019, and I posted the director Alma Haral and said something about like my new idol, and she liked it, and I was like, "Oh, okay, we're going to start talking." Started talking to her. So that was 2019. We've kept in touch. She helped me find. I was making a documentary actually over lockdown where we were following DPs from around the world, and I was producing it, and I wasn't getting a lot of diversity in the DPs. They tended to be white males, and she runs a platform called Free the Work, which is about underrepresented crews, and she pointed me in the direction of 3 DPs that we got who were massive and amazing. And her and I have since kept in touch, said things like, we'd love to work together, that kind of thing. She's given me her lockdown list of movies. So that was like literally sliding into the DMs to a filmmaker that I really, really admired from afar. So
thank you, Courtney. I think that is one of the ways that can totally work, and I'm sure that have you guys had experience of people sort of coming in, getting in touch out of the blue with you, and then you being able to be helpful in their creative journeys?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And actually, it was the relationship that I was kind of building with Jacinda Ardern on Instagram through DMs that allowed us to kind of move into interviewing her for transmission as well. So that was really helpful for us.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And for me, I established a relationship on Instagram with some people in Bollywood, and now I'm working as a coach on a movie via Zoom in Bollywood. So yeah, absolutely, those connectivities can really pay off. But you have to be careful too, because you've got to go, is this just a random weirdo, or is this a fruitful relationship with another human being?
Absolutely, definitely buyer beware. But it is great to know that sort of thing is possible. The other example I was keen to bring up, so Max and I, who know each other before this, we play in a Game Inclusive rugby team together. Max, as you guys will know through various conversations today, is the director of Rurangi, who has had some great success. Stand up, Max. Max is recently finding some internet fame due to his role on the upcoming RuPaul's Drag Race, and has had quite a bit of internet kind of coverage around that. And we've been talking about how best to make hay while the sun shines in terms of making sure that the audience that he is generating through this television show and coming to his social media then roll through into his projects that he's working on. So I'm not really sure if you have a response back to that, or I just think it's a prime example of something that could be used in that professional space.
Yeah, I guess maybe, I mean, everyone's sick of me standing up, but I'm in the middle of a crisis of opportunity, and I guess the best way to give it context is on Saturday, I had 8 pictures on my Instagram account that's been there for 5 years and like a couple of hundred followers. And like today, there's like 3,900 and so many messages from people that wanting to give me stuff, to pose naked for them, to draw pictures, but I
was naked and draw pictures at the same time.
I mean, do you know what RuPaul's Drag Race is? And
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the pit crew, we stand around in our underwear, and I mean, the important thing for me is Rurangi and this which is the product of New Zealand's gender diverse community who've sacrificed so much, and now it's
She's across it.
Yeah. I'm just figuring out like how to turn this into an opportunity for the show, because there's this weird disconnect of like the people coming to me want to see me in my underwear, and I want that, but there is this overlap because it's the queer audience, right? And there's been this collaboration between Rurangi and RuPaul, so. Yeah, crisis of opportunity. Any advice?
Yeah, totally. What's your thoughts?
My advice would be because you can try and kind of like market it and find an angle where you can kind of trick the drag audience or the RuPaul audience to connect with Rurangi, which has got a different kaupapa. Or you can just really be upfront with it and say, here's what I want to do. I want to connect you, the RuPaul audience, to Rurangi, and that may not seem like a natural fit, but I encourage you to seek it out, and then you should get a pair of underpants and you should paint Rurangi across your underpants and you should pose with that, and and
I love this idea. Yes, let's do it.
Just really lean into the fact that you've got 2 completely different elements and you want to find a way to bring them together, and then you'll find a proportion of your RuPaul audience will go, you know what, you're funny and I like what you're trying to do, and I'm actually going to cross over and engage with Rurangi as well.
Yeah, cool.
So using your natural flair, but also the authenticity that Miranda's talking about to create a strong, secure bridge.
Yeah, I'm like, speak out your truth, and it's like back in the 90s, Madonna came to fame by wearing her underwear on the outside of her clothes, and that's what I always think about. It's really interesting to reveal the structure and say, look, I'm not going to try and trick you into following into buying things from farmers by pretending that that my Instagram account is really there to celebrate farmers. Like I'm seeing a lot of New Zealand stuff about that at the moment. People who are doing a paid relationship with farmers, for example. Don't trick me. Just say, look, here I am going to farmers because I've got a paid relationship, and I hope you'll follow me because it's going to be funny. So that's what I would say to you, Max, is that you've got 2 awesome, diverse audiences there. Use your sense of humour and your awesome body to draw people into connecting up those 2 things.
I have social media, but I am not a fan of using it myself. So I find it really hard to create social media content to sort of promote myself, just because I don't really like using it. I like to be on it and I like to look at other people's stuff, but in terms of trying to naturally engage with that myself with my own content is really hard. Is there like a few kind of tips to sort of like ease in, or things to consider, even if you don't want to do it every day, just like these are some good opportunities to do it, or things to consider to engage or start engaging an audience to build that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think from my own experience, and I don't see it, and maybe I'm being naive about this or willfully naive, but I'm not trying to use it so much as a professional tool as something that fulfills and is creative for me individually. But I just think that it becomes easier the more you do it. And if you have that discipline of doing it every day or once a week or whatever, then it just becomes so much easier. And that's what I've found over the couple of 3 years in which I've been posting every day. And there's some days where I'm, waking up at 6 and know that I want to post something at 6:30 and I don't feel quite so keen, but I do it and push through that. And actually those are often times when I'm happiest about what I've posted. So yeah, sometimes just pushing through the blocks has been useful for me.
Yeah, and I would say this is I would actually echo what Stuart's saying about his social media, is that for him it's a personal diary, and sometimes it's a beautiful picture that he takes on a walk along the South Coast, and sometimes it's a red carpet picture that he might post of Thomason doing some crazy thing. Do you know what I mean? And of course the red carpet post is going to get a huge amount of uptake and interest, and I guess what happens for him is that then people will transition from that photo into following other aspects of what he's tracking that could benefit from some of that light. And that's the way that I approach it too, which is not quite so much an answer to your question, but like here's a post that I did which got, a huge amount of interest. That's a recent announcement about a film that our daughter Thomason is doing. And I knew that they were going to get a huge amount of interest. Obviously it's going to, because it's global and it's interesting and it's kind of a cool thing for a young Kiwi to get that opportunity. But then I'll follow that with this post, which is the Women's Refuge ad, because I want people to transition from the red carpet cool thing straight on to donating $20 for the Women's Refuge for tomorrow for Mother's Day. So I've got a kind of a manipulative yet altruistic approach to my social media, where my sometimes my motivation for posting is to benefit someone other than myself. So I guess that's my answer to your question. You could use your social media to benefit somebody other than yourself, to spotlight somebody other than yourself. And then slowly, if you feel comfortable, then you yourself, your own identity, you might kind of, you might edge in.
And you'll be revealing yourself in what you choose to highlight or spotlight in other people as well. So you will feel kind of less reserved around that over time, I'm sure.
The other thing that I would add to that is if you're feeling sort of self-conscious around it from a personal perspective, echoing what they're saying, maybe looking at some of the professional things that you've been part of that you can start to kind of push out through your social media. Someone else that does a really great job at social media through Twitter is Simon Bennett, who is a showrunner that's done many years of many different projects and is currently the showrunner for Power Rangers. And he uses Twitter as his mechanism, and he's always tweeting unique behind-the-scenes bits and bobs about Power Rangers and engaging with the international Power Rangers audience about that. And that's essentially helping bring his audience up, but but it's also not something that he's doing super personally. The other person to throw a little bit of a props to, that's probably where you're going, is Stephen Zanowski, who was the producer of Shortland Street for a few years, and he would often take over the Shortland Street Twitter account at 7 p.m, and he would give all these little insights about what went on here and what went on there, and this wall has got this behind, and people loved it.
Yeah. And something else Simon Bennett does. Can I just say also something? I'm sorry, to add to the Simon Bennett thing, Simon's got another thread that, like, at the moment, his Power Rangers thread is a strong one, but another thread that he follows is archival photographs of great New Zealand theatre.
Ah, yes.
And yeah, I really engage with Simon. So I follow him both on his Power Rangers Insights, which I find funny. Tracy Collins, it's great to see the crazy dinosaurs that they're building in the middle of the forest. But also I love to follow Simon's trajectory where he is immortalising archival footage or archival photographs of New Zealand theatre productions. So there's many threads for him that all kind of DNA together.
I
Fantastic.
think just to add to that with Simon is that he really uses it as a temperature check for the audience as well. That as a producer of the shows, he's really engaging with it. And he's spoken about the fact that it feels like when you're on Twitter watching a show live as a producer, that it's like being in a theatre, hearing the audience's response. So,
Yeah, great.
so that just for producers, creators in the room, that is obviously a way to join the conversation.
Yeah, very good point. Very good point. Is there anything else that they'd like to add to the mix?
We found that with transmission recently as well, that we were able to kind of accumulate some of the responses that people had because they were DMing us or leaving comments on Miranda's Facebook or on my Instagram. So it's just a great way of archiving some of the direct responses that we had to the show, which are going to be useful for us further down the immediately rewarding in the first place, but they will also be useful for us further down the track when we come to tour the show, so that we have different publicity angles for it, or when we're making applications to help with funding for shows, to be able to include some of that social media feedback is invaluable.
Yeah.
Michelle.
Hi, you two. Thank you so much for your lovely korero so far. Really helpful. This is something maybe for the producers in the room. If you've got a slate of projects and they really kind of span, like maybe there's one that's funny, but one that's like very YA and one that's very wholesome and Christian, perhaps. Like, how do you feel like there's sort of like a way to give light to all of those, or should one hold off and focus on one sort of project and one voice so that it doesn't become confusing? Or like Miranda, as you said, is it okay to have multiple threads and seem a little bit like you're a discombobulated crazy person?
I don't know. I think that if you personally, I will find a focus, and I'll ride a particular horse for a period of time, and then I will get off that horse and get onto another one, and then follow that journey for a while. So on my Labour Party Jacinda supporting bent last year, I didn't do anything on social media except for support the Labour Party, and that was just what I was doing, and I got a lot of as I said before, pushback, but that pushback kind of fed into the messages that I was getting, both in support and against what I was doing, really fed into the conversation. I got very fiery and very passionate, so I really followed that strongly, and I didn't dilute it by focusing on anything else. Recently, doing transmission, I pretty much focused on transmission, but every now and again I'd go, I don't think that I'm getting predictable, that I'm only going to focus on transmission. Sometimes I would just drop something else in. But predominantly the flavour was different aspects, different flavours, different photographic fields on that one theme. So I wouldn't want to confuse people by following too many horses simultaneously.
Because you will also have a kind of an intuitive feeling as to what's going to be valuable for a particular project. It may not be valuable for a particular project and development to put it out there on social media at this time, because people will go, well, what am I to do with that knowledge or information? Do you know what I mean? And so it may be quickly forgettable, whereas one of the projects may actually really benefit from seeing the light of day in a social media context at that particular time. So I think you just use your own kind of natural sense of what's useful for a project at that point in time.
I think the other thing to know, and Miranda, to keep on your horse analogy, is that depending on where, on the projects you're working on, all of those horses might live in the same stable. So the idea of, if you're kind of taking a behind-the-scenes approach, you can maybe chop and change between the different bits of content that you're posting versus sort of delving really deeply into the particular ins and outs of the project, if that makes sense. Kind of looking at a behind-the-scenes approach on a wide range of projects, especially if you're being retrospective of work on your social media.
The A-Z of Publicity workshop podcasts are proudly supported by New Zealand On Air's Industry Development Fund, the US Embassy, and Images and Sound. Music for the podcast was provided by Poddington Bear, whakatoki by Lalena Fe'onati, and voiceover by Gemma Gracewood. Kia ora.